All right, let's move on to another important step that I like to do in the beginning, which is to get the sleeves ready. I'll put the sleeves on last, but I like to have them out of the way. It's also, I found really efficient to do a lot of the baseline serging at the beginning and the edges of this sleeve piece, which pull that down all into view. There's the sleeve cap and the two sides. That's a very straight, simple serging that's completely separate from everything else. And so I can do it now while I'm doing things like serging the pockets on. I just cut a strip that was about 15 inches long in half. This same 15 inches works for binding the neckline, and so I just make two identically length pieces, and then I can have this about 7 inches when you take off the bit for the binding there. All right, so I've got that ready to go, but actually my first step, if we come on over here to the sewing machine, is going to be to adjust the setting on the machine to lengthen the stitches. And so in this case on my machine here, there's a dial, and you can't really see it, but I'm turning it all the way up to 6. So if you looked right here, it says 6. And this is as high as far apart as the stitches will go. So 6 is the very long stitches. Okay, and I am going to stitch both of these sleeve pieces in 2 places using this very long stitch that essentially allows me to gather it when I need to. Okay, so part number 1 is this long bit all the way across the bottom. So if this is the side seam and this is the cap of the sleeve, this sort of curved part around the top, then I'm doing the very bottom, again, the part that will end up being gathered there for the binding. And I'm going to go right to the edge of the foot because this one needs to be hidden. Now, I have my machine set so that it's actually going to knot in the beginning on one side, and because of this it means that when I gather, I'm only going to be gathering from one side, although I'll show you a bit of a trick using the seam ripper to free the rest of it, because I just didn't want to bother changing the settings. But that also means that when I come here to the end, I'm not going to push the handy cut the stitches, but I'm actually going to pull it so that I have a really long trail, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. And that allows me to find one of these strings that's hanging here. And if I can just find one of them right there. So if I had 2 and now I have 1, and then I can just take that one, and you can see if I just pull on the one, I can actually spread gathers into the fabric. All right, I'm going to do it again across the top of the cap. I'm going to start right here where the inflection point of the cap starts and go right around the top. Again, just going next to the edge of the fabric by following the edge of the fabric with the edge of the foot, because I want these stitches to be hidden inside. I don't want them to accidentally poof out and show. And so I'm gonna just run around. And this one here, I won't actually even activate until the very end when I'm ready to stitch. I've come to a spot here where, hello, focus down here. Sorry, I guess I haven't learned quite how to set the autofocus on my phone, but I think you can see that there's sort of a clip here, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure to run my gather right to the clip. I didn't have a clip on the other side because I've just gotten used to matching just the back. That double clip tells me that it's the back, and again I'm going to leave a nice long string. Okay, so I've done one, and that's all I'll do for the recording, but obviously I would repeat it. And now, of course, I realize like you've been turned upside down, so I'm gonna spin you around. And let's take a look at what I'm going to do next, because I think this is a really useful thing. So I've already started to gather it, but I'm going to undo that. And I've got my two sides of my nice wide sleeve bottom here, and I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to put a pin right here where it's folded in half. And then I'm going to fold it in half again. So this is the quarter spot, and I'm going to put a pin here at the quarter spot. And then I'm going to open it, and then I'm going to put a matching pin at the quarter spot on the other side. And now that I've done that, I've got 3 pins that tell me each of 4 quarters across the bottom. I'm going to do the same thing with one of these pieces of bias tape. So I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to put a pin at the top, and as you might have remembered from the video that you watched earlier, I'm going to make sure that I do this on the edge that I have trimmed to be nice and flat. And then I'm going to do it again to get my quarter spot, and I'm going to do it again to get my other quarter spot. And so now I have 3 pins, 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters. I'm going to turn this so that the seam allowance is sticking out, and this fabric has a face, so I need to make sure that I'm putting the part that has the pretty seam towards the pretty fabric. And I'm going to match the 2 pins in the middle and take one away and pin them together. I'm going to match the 2 pins at the first quarter and take one away and pin them together. Now I'll bring back one of the pins I took away, and I'm going to pin the 2 ends. And then I'll move over to this side, and I'll match the 3/4 pins and take one away, and then I'm going to bring one back, and now I have it pinned at each end and at every quarter. You remember that I took these 2 threads and already pulled them, so I know I can get apart just the one. And if I pull on just the one, not both, I can spread this gatherness, and I don't want to pull too hard. And if my thread is weak or old, you know, if you inherited thread from your grandma, it may be really old. And so you don't want to pull too hard or you might break it, and then you'll have trouble. I mentioned I'll show you a bit of a trick, right? So if you have trouble finding it, then you can don't use the front of your seam ripper, use the back of your seam ripper to kind of pull up. You don't want to break it, you just want to catch it so that you can grab it and keep pulling, right? So that's what you'd have to do if you broke the thread. Let's see here, find the long one. I'm going to put a little bit more gather, and actually it's just fine if I gather it so that this is kind of loose and floppy, because that lets me know that I have enough gather all the way across that when I spread the gathers out, I can get them to be nice and mostly even, right? So I basically just pull it back, and then you can see I'm holding it with my hand right here, and I'm basically just kind of pulling it to flatten it and make sure that I am spreading the gathers evenly. And so now I'll come back here and flip you around so you can watch this process. Let's see, I've got to lock it somehow. I know there's a lock feature in here. There we go. And so now I'm going to sew on the side that has the gather so I can keep an eye on it. And I am going to use my 1/2 inch seam allowance at this point. So now I will be beyond the gather stitches that I sewed before. And I'm going to make sure that I get it into the fabric so that I can really get started if I have the auto knot on. And I'm making sure to kind of really spread those gathers out. And you'll notice, you know what you're hearing? You're hearing the sound of very low stitches. So let me hit the clear button and let's go back actually. Not this So yeah, so I was actually, that's why I was moving so fast, because the stitches were very long, and I cleared out that, and then as you can see now we have the knot there, and we have the sound that we're used to compared to the speed, right, that we're actually putting in short enough stitches. But that long stitch, you can use it for gathers, or you can use it for basting, right, if you just needed to hook a couple things together, because it is so easy to take, and I'm using my fingernail just to spread those gathers out a little bit, because it is so easy to just take these gather stitches out. I won't actually bother. I could pull the gather stitches out when I was all done, but I'm not going to bother, because they're loose enough that they won't cause the any kind of puckering in the sleeve opening, and so it's just one more step of work. When I get here, I am going to touch the knot button before I touch the cut button, because I do want to have it all knotted. Okay, so now I'm going to take out 3 of these 4 pins, but I'm going to keep, or 2 of the 4 pins, but I'm going to keep 3 of them. So there's the third right there. I'm going to keep 3 of them, and then I'm actually going to take the whole thing and fold it up like this. And I don't need to serge this edge, because it's actually going to go right inside the binding. So then I'm going to match these 2 lines right here and use one of the 3 that I kept. I'm going to put the second of the 3 that I kept right down here at the bottom, right there. And I'm going to have to figure out how to get the autofocus working on this camera. And then I'm going to pull this all the way up to the top right here, and I'm going to pin it at least once there. Now, if you aren't really comfortable, you might pin it again a couple of times down the body, but I'm pretty familiar with it, and so I'm just gonna bareback it, so to speak, and not use as many pins, because I'm stitching slowly enough that I can eye it as I go. And I've got the 1/2 inch going, and you can see here that I was holding it with my fingers right there to make sure that my not pinning, and I'm going to stop and check it down here, and it's still working well. And I should be following that 1/2 inch line right there. But one of the beauties of making more than 100 versions of something is that you start to get a feel for what's important and what isn't. So in many cases, the seam allowance in a spot like this isn't super important. Do that knot, and then do the slit. All right, you'll notice you might have seen me kind of pulling those threads away, because I actually do want to just trim them off. I could get them trimmed during serging, and that was the sound of me talking with the needle in my teeth, pin in my teeth. I could get them trimmed during serging, but sometimes I forget, and that kind of makes a mess. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to the serger, and then I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like. And all right, and so there it is, all serged up. And at this point now, I'm going to come back to the sewing table here and hit the unlock. It's harder than I thought. Ah, there it is. Okay, flip you over. And talk about what to do next. So I need to turn the whole sleeve right side out. And that's because I want to sew the last bit of this binding bit from the front, so I can make sure to do a really tidy job. I'm going to come up here and check to see where I had my double slit. That tells me that this is the back side on this particular piece. So I'm going to make sure to fold my binding, the whole seam that I just finished. I'm going to fold it towards the back. And then I'm actually going to, and again, I could do all this with ironing, but I'm just going to eye it. I'm folding this in half. So I'm folding it down, and it is now touching the top of the seam allowance. So if this was a 1/2 inch seam allowance, which we did before, and this whole thing was 2 inches, then when I fold it down like this, I now have 1 inch wide across the top, and I have a 1/2 inch here and a 1/2 inch there. And that means that when I fold it down one more time and kind of pull it a tiny bit, if I stuck a pin right here, right there, at the very edge there, and I check to look on the back side, I would see that the pin is coming out right beneath the binding. And that tells me that I pulled the binding down far enough. You guys, this is just going to take practice on your part, I have to say. So in many cases, when I look to the back of my binding here, I might see that the line isn't perfectly even. The important thing is that it looks nice from the front. I'm going to do the spot where the seam is, making sure to point the allowance towards the back, and then I'm going to repeat it up here at the top. Right, so I fold it down, and then I fold it down one more time, and then using my fingers, I feel that if I stuck the pin in right there, right, I would have just caught the edge of the binding. And then I'm going to repeat the same thing, fold down, fold in half, and when I stick it up right through the edge there, I can see that I've just caught the edge of the binding, and I'm going to repeat this one more time. Here I had my diagonal seam, so I'm going to feel with my fingers to make sure that it's really folded properly as I go, and make sure that I pull this up high enough before I pin it down. Oh, and look, right there, those are those extra gather stitches that I was putting in that I realized were the wrong size, but they don't really hurt anything. So I could have pulled them out, but in this case, I'll just clip them off. You remember I was stitching the two together with the extra long stitches. All right, so back to the sewing machine one more time. Okay, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be editing all that out. And again, let's see if I can really get it nice and focused there. Okay, so I'm going to start stitching right here at the seam so that I can make sure that it looks really good, that I overlap. And I'm also feeling with my fingers to make sure that everything is smooth on the inside, right, that it's all been double tucked. If I was nervous about it, I could have ironed it. I probably should have ironed it if I was teaching you how to do it. I also just want to wear this. Now I'm feeling with my fingernail right there, and I can feel the edge, this edge right there. I can feel it with my fingernail right there. And so that tells me that I've got enough space to, and boy, it's going to be hard to drive this properly. So if my stitching in the ditch isn't perfect, please just remember that there's a whole camera in the way. And so I am going to keep feeling with my fingernail and keep feeling with my finger here to make sure that I've got it pulled up far enough. And I know this seems pretty hard, but in fact, in most cases, when I've taught people that only just learned how to sew, how to do this step, right? This is a really important, very basic sewing skill that they can use over and over in all kinds of projects. and I am getting close to the other end, so forgive me if I just sort of concentrate and get there before my dog starts barking at the delivery guy, because of course. So then here I am, right back where I started, and I'll go ahead and hit the knot button and then the cut button. All right, and let's look on the back side to see how I did. And I want to inspect it all the way around to check, right, that no matter where it was, okay, there's one spot where it's a little bit close, but overall, right, maybe right there I didn't quite get it, so I could always go back and redo that, right, just by stitching in just that spot. And you can actually see it makes sense because the stitches sort of bulge down right there, right where we lost it on the back side. And that was just me not being able to see, but there's nothing wrong with just coming back in and giving it a start over to get a tiny bit closer and get on with the stitch that I'm teaching you. So let's see, cut that knot one more time, and there you can see that I managed to catch it this time, and I'll have to trim off all that extra, right? But I caught it, so now it's not pooching out, and I'll repeat this whole same process on the other sleeve, and then I will set these sleeves aside. So now I'm just going to clean up all of this extra thread that's all just hanging around in here and set the sleeve aside.